What is the real reason that referrals and joint ventures work? The actual reason. That's our conversation today on the podcast. Let's jump in. BJ O'Neill here with the Business Coaching Success Podcast. So glad you're here, where I share with you strategies, tools, and tips to be able to grow your business coaching practice to six figures and beyond as a Christian business coach. Let's jump in. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Glad that you are here. So glad that you're taking some time to listen or to watch, depending upon how you're consuming the podcast. And interesting subject today. Now, I talk about referrals and joint ventures and things like that on our podcast, but I don't know that I've taken time to do an episode by itself on just like the real underlying root cause of why. And quite frankly, as I've been thinking about this and praying about it and processing it, I don't find a lot of subjects and conversations around this. And I've got my notes here for the podcast because this one gets a little more weedy on and only the why. And I want to explain the reason why. No pun intended there, but the reason why I wanted to bring this subject to you is that you oftentimes hear, and honestly, I do this, we're constantly giving advice on here's what works. Here's what I would do. But oftentimes we're not spending a lot of time or enough time, in my opinion, on, but why? Like you say that this works, do this, but why does it do that? And there are some, I'm going to use the term scientific, and today that's exactly what we're going to look at. God created the body. He created the mind. He created the way that we're wired, or allowed that process to be created, if you will. And from a neuroscience perspective, there is a reason why I'm such a believer in this term of sphere of influence. And so this week I'm giving a presentation with our coaches on a subject all about how to get 100 leads in 90 days. Okay? That's kind of the precipice of the podcast itself. And in that, though, there's a part of that that I'm going to talk about, the neuroscience part of why. Now, I'm going to go very deep, or I should say deeper than the presentation will. But it got me thinking about our community here and the podcast and whatnot. And I felt like it might be something that you would want to, listen to, understand as well. Real quick before we jump into it, if you have been, you've been listening, you're engaged, you're a faith-based, driven business owner, or a business leader, maybe you're a VP, sales, whatever. You've got business experience at some level, and you've always thought about this idea of being able to package that together to build either a side hustle or a complete and total business coaching practice of your own, where you are helping business owners grow their profitability, grow their leadership, grow their culture. If that sounds like, hey, that's me, but I just don't want to create stuff on my own, I don't want to fill with all the tools and whatnot, then you can go to businesscoachmastery.com. That's businesscoachmastery.com. There's some information there, as well as a link that you can book a quick, what we call an Explore the Systems call, where we'll just kind of share with you exactly what we do, our platform. That way you can determine if it's worth learning more about or not. Okay. The reasons, the why. Why does, it's not enough, in my opinion, just to just take things at face value. Why do referrals work so well? Why do joint ventures work so well, right? So I'm going to walk through several different things, and I'll work really hard at not making this to be liturgical sounding, because there's a lot of facts here to kind of uncover after doing some research, and as well as just some thoughts based upon my own experience personally, as well as working with hundreds of coaches over the years as to why. Well, the first is when it comes to just what we call the core neuroscience principles. Okay, now clearly I'm not a doctor, right? But I do understand how this works, and have studied it, used it, and have watched it play out over and over and over again. The first is that the brain avoids risk before it seeks reward. The brain avoids risk before it seeks a reward. Okay, that's just kind of how, and there's certainly levels of this, right, based upon your personality type and how you are wired different than me. That risk reward will be higher or lower, also based upon experiences as well. But the human brain is a threat first, not opportunity built brain. That's the whole fight or flight, type of reasoning. So when someone encounters for the first time an ad, when they encounter a cold message, when they encounter even a very strange and or a stranger's offer, think about the person knocking on the door, selling pest control, selling, whatever they may be selling, not knocking on just pest control, by the way, but they do a lot of that. There is an automatic kind of, buildup, if you will, a lift in threat, in risk. And so the brain activates uncertainty. So what's happening is the brain is automatically flipping a switch of going to uncertainty detection. It's firing off an alarm. And it's really important that you understand this because it begins to help you connect better. You being a business coach who is looking to build your network, as to why it's so important to stay consistent in building your network, both those people who you should just get to know to expand your network and those who you might be able to help that are actually business owners. So the first thing that happens, again, is this uncertainty detection. So a referrer, if you will, someone who is making an introduction to you and somebody else, it bypasses that because someone trusted essentially has vetted you, all psychological, kind of happening in real time. This is just the way that we process a lot of information. Again, those who have gone through have had a lot of risk to fall apart. Those who are, super open-minded. Yes, there's going to be levels of this that kind of move around a little bit. But that perceived risk drops immediately. Now, you may hear that and go, well, duh. I understand that. I don't know that we do oftentimes understand the core reasoning of the way God created the mind as to why certain strategies work better than others. It's more than just people like people, or people will be willing to work with people that they kind of know. Yes, that's ends up being somewhat of the output, but when you understand it, you have a higher risk of engaging with it and doing a much more excellent job with it than not. All right. And then cognitive load is then reduced. So these are the things that go on that we're not paying attention to. So right now at the recording of this, we're in the height of the NFL playoffs, and I even think in the next day or so, the college football championship will be played. Okay, and so you look at those coaches on the sideline, and all of them, especially the head coaches, they have these. I use the word playbooks, if you will. These days, it's a laminated sheet, back and forward, or front and back, rather. And half the times they've got markings on them and whatnot, and they literally have them in front of their face at all times. That's the plays that they're calling. Now, why do they do that? That is strategy, okay? That situational awareness, and they're calling plays based upon the situation that we're in. Well, when you take a peek at like that, in terms of business coaching, if you had that coaching sheet in front of your face right now, we're looking at referrals as a strategy. It's not that it just works. It's a strategic piece that works for a reason, okay? So referrals don't convince, they simply disarm resistance. So when we go into relationship building mode, and by the way, I am 100%, you don't have to explain to me that cold calling absolutely can work. It can. But you have to have a significantly high volume to do it for it to work. Why? Because so many people are into that risk detection mode. And when you're using referrals to introduce you to people, the referrer doesn't have to do any convincing when we're doing cold. And I'm not bashing cold, by the way. When we're doing cold, there is a level of convincing that we have to do. The referral process disarms the resistance, all right? So that's the first thing. The brain avoids risk before it seeks reward. The second is that borrowed trust is neurologically efficient, okay? When you look at just the complexity of doing business, and you ask the question, well, what's the most efficient way to do a process? In this case, it's what's the most efficient way to get clients would be the ultimate output, but I got to know enough people. And again, everybody's situation is different. You may have a huge Rolodex, if you will, because of your background. You may not need to do this as much as somebody else, right? But borrowed trust is the neurological efficient process. Why? Trust is expensive for the brain to form. It takes a lot of time for the brain to form what we call pattern recognition. It takes a lot of time to form what we call consistent signals. So when you have a referral person or a referrer, if you want to call it that, or a joint venture partnership of some sort, it transfers what we call pre-existing trust, as we talked about just a moment. So what's happening is the brain treats it as, if I trust them, I trust you, you are likely safe. It's just a thought that the brain kind of gravitates to. That's why warm introductions typically close faster. JV audiences typically convert higher. Referrals don't need as much explanation. And that's one of the values of understanding that borrowed trust is not just a good idea, it's neurologically efficient because the brain's not needing to process all this information, and that's what cognitive load is all about. And so when we're basically looking for a strategic pathway through a better efficient process, this is the way it does, okay? Why? When you're not building trust from zero, you're reducing the time frame because you're inheriting the trust from that trusted source. Next thing, social proof is a shortcut, but not a tactic. And that shortcut really is a strategy, okay? The brain evolved itself over time to essentially survive in tribes. So if others approve, risk feels slower, decision speed increases, doubt decreases, right? And the referrers and the collaboration efforts, here's what they trigger. People like me do this. That's the reason why when you see, like if you're ever, we were in New York recently, there was a number of places where there are lines, coffee shops, restaurants, different attractions. And you look over there and the brain starts to process, wait a minute, there's obviously something up. Because in that process, the long line, even though I don't know those people, the long line, those people in the line, they are the referrer. Because the brain is intercepting and starting to process, well, if all those people like me are standing in line for that, it's obviously good. Even though I know nothing about it. I don't know the business. I've never had the coffee. But clearly, if all those people have had it, then I should have it too. And so there's this transference of trust even when I don't know who they are. It's basically saying these people are validating. So now the offer and the product has validation even though I know nothing about it, right? It's saying I'm not alone in this decision. Again, I'm using the line of people in line, I think it was Ralph's coffee shop. We were passing by. It's saying that I'm not alone in making this decision. And that's the same thing when a friend of yours, from your past or whatever, introduced you to somebody else. That's exactly what's happening in this process as well, right? That's why one voice often beats 100 ads. Now, look, I'm a big believer in paid ads. We do the same thing. But you just have to have a high volume and do it extremely consistent just to get a certain percentage. You don't have to do that when you're working in the referral process, okay? And so authority is transferred through association, neurologically speaking. In other words, that's the way the brain intercepts the information, okay? It's not declared, it's assigning it. And that's, again, what reduces risk, what reduces overwhelm, what reduces cognitive load, what we talk about, the wall of objections versus the wall of decreased objections is that the brain is removing that because of the transference of authority. So even when they don't know who you are at all. The brain is linking you to that individual that they already know and that they already like and that they already trust. And because of that, the authority gets transferred through association as well. Now, look, you can obviously blow that, right? Like if you end up meeting the individual and for whatever reason, the conversation just didn't take, like there's just, this is also, human nature as well. There's sometimes we just, can't always get on the same page with everyone, right? And so here's the point. We got to move beyond this idea that, well, but interacting with referrals and this, that, and the other, that takes a lot of time. That takes a lot of effort. That takes a lot of energy and so on. And it's like, well, first of all of it, I mean, everything in life has a level of effort, energy, and whatnot. But I do believe that we look at the referral process as it taking longer, and actually it's one of the fastest, most simple way when you have a plan. When you have a plan that works over a period of, we'll call it 6 months. I'm going to sit down with X amount of people. I'm going to ask them, hey, who in your network is someone I need to know? Or do you know a business owner who is, they're doing okay, but they really would like to do better, or they're in the ditch, they need help. Like when you do that consistently with enough people, you will expand your network and you'll expand opportunities. Here's what typically happens, because we're humans. We misunderstand how this process works. And so we get 2 or 3 weeks into it, and it's not, we either misassign what the output should look like. In other words, we think it's going to be a lot faster or the numbers should be bigger. We just don't understand that. And what do? We begin to either A, quit, or just release the gas pedal a bit. And that over time significantly escalates the challenge, because we begin to displace credibility to the whole process because we're not treating it correct. But when we understand that neurologically, it is one of the best ways to help someone out, to build your network because of the trust transference. And when we do it consistently enough to where we get some wins under our belt this way, everything has an opportunity to change. So it's not just a good thing to do. It's not just one of the better ones. It's a neurological process that just cannot be helped when done correct. We always have a way of doing things incorrect, of course. We got to do it the correct way, okay? So there you go. There is the process of why the referral process works, why strategic partnerships and joint ventures work. It is neurologically rooted in the fact that risk is high when they don't know you. Risk gets reduced and sometimes completely removed when they do know you, because of the transference of someone that we both know together. There you go. All right. I pray and hope that added value today on your business coaching journey. Until next time, take care.